Continuing our six-part series on learning about the Kingdom of Majapahit, we'll be reacting to Kingdom of the Majapahit, Wrath of the Khan Part 2. Link to the original video is down in the description below. But if you want to react or check out my other reactions and commentary videos on this saga, on this series, there is a playlist down in the description so you can watch all the parts as they come out or after they've already come out. Without further ado, let's jump right into it.
1292. Marco Polo sits idle in a Sumatran port, waiting for the trade winds to shift so he can return home to Venice. He spends his time collecting stories about an island called Java. Mariners say it's the largest island in the world, he writes.
Which, by the way, I think some of y'all were talking about this. We kind of talked about this a little bit in the last video, but after I recorded that video and kind of read y'all's comments, there's a lot of mentions of Java around the world. Whether it be through text, like a mention here and there, maybe not some significant conversation, but the fact that Java, like, you got to remember, like, there's no internet, there's not even really mail, like you can't like send a bird, there's no emails, there's no internet, nothing. And so the fact that there's even knowledge of this foreign place traveling across the world and everyone just kind of like, oh yeah, there's this place called Java. It's crazy. It's crazy. And that even those other countries and societies wrote it down to be like, oh, there's a place called Java. So it's just not just Marco Polo or Mr. Polo over here. But it's like, there's been tons of, like, there's not tons, but there's the fact that there's multiple instances of Java being mentioned is crazy. Like, especially back then. So I want to highlight that I didn't really understand or really know in the first video, but it's cool to see that like a name like that just traveled the world.
That it's subject to a great king and pays tribute to no one. People speak of its wealth and the spices it produces. Java's ports throng with merchants, and its treasure, they say, is beyond telling.
Which means it's good. I mean, hey, if this was a business, it means that you have, got good customer reviews. If you really think about it, right? Like, you're getting 5 stars on the Java business app,
And I can assure that the Great Khan could never get possession of this island, he writes, on account of the great distance and the great expense of an expedition. The stories Polo heard were exaggerated. Sumatra was in fact larger than Java, and the island didn't grow spice, it just controlled the trade routes.
But we did learn in the first video that Java may not have had spices, but I believe, I forgot what the island's name is, or maybe it even is this island, but y'all did have, in that area, you did have lots of rice. So if you didn't have spices, you did have rice. So,
but he was right about one thing. The Great Khan should have left Java alone.
True. Which, spoiler alert, we do have a video talking about how you guys defeated the Mongols, which is really funny and just so cool. Funny in a good way, because it's like, yeah, you know what? We don't want to rehash that whole video. Go check it out. It's on my channel. We'll probably be in this playlist too as well. So we have tons of Indonesian reaction videos and commentary videos you can check out.
Three years earlier, an imperial envoy makes his case before the king of Singhasari, the greatest power on Java. The Great Khan, he says, has been monitoring conditions in this southern ocean. He'd watched as Singhasari had aggressively expanded, taking over Srivijaya's crumbling vassal empire to its east and conquering Bali to its west. The Great Khan had seen how this sent the shipping lanes into disorder. And it had not escaped the Khan's attention that Singhasari had rebuffed his order to send royal captives to the Mongol court, as any good vassal should. Now, he offered one last chance to comply.
Spoiler alerts, he did not.
The king of Singhasari had seen this conflict brewing. For centuries, the archipelago's kingdoms had sent trade missions carrying spices, resins, and fine wood to the Chinese emperor, who then sent back gifts of porcelain and silk. The Chinese had always called these tributes, since the imperial throne did not engage in anything as crass as trade. And as the states of Southeast Asia had gone along with it, China could call the trade whatever it wanted, as long as the ships kept coming.
Which I think it's it's one of those things where I'm really liking how a lot of these earlier kingdoms in the Southeast Asian region, but more specifically Indonesia, were like, yeah, just call it whatever you want. We're just trying to do business and trying to get along. Like imagine even back then, there was a lot of societies that were like, no, you got to be technical, like you got to say exact the right thing, and it's like there was back then kingdoms were rising and falling pretty quickly, compared to like like technically not so much because time moved slower, I guess I would say. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, societies rose and fell very fast in proportion to the things that happened to them. Does that make sense? Um, and so when you look at when you look at how you guys handled things and the idea of like, let's just figure it out. Let's just whatever you want to call it, sure. Whatever works for you. As long as the trade keeps working, that's all. Hey, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Right? To me, that's very smart. That is very good diplomacy. That's good politics. That's good coexisting. And it's crazy how many societies back then just didn't understand that concept of like, you're not going to get along with everybody, but at least try to do your best. That's it. That's it. It's not that complicated. But the fact that you guys were able to figure that out earlier on it's such a big deal. It's so cool.
Once the Mongols began rampaging through China, and that tribute system broke down, the archipelago began a much more direct trade with Chinese merchants. Now, these new Mongol emperors wanted to make Singhasari a true vassal. But Singhasari was a power on the rise. Their king had built a miniature empire and controlled the spice for cotton trade with India. He'd even been inducted into the mystic Himalayan school of Tantric Buddhism that Kublai Khan himself practiced.
Wait, what? That's kind of crazy, actually. What? That's kind of random. So they should have came to some common ground. They went to the same school. That's crazy. Okay, that's kind of crazy. Yeah. I mean, granted, spoiler alert, we found out that the Khan himself was a little bit older and he was kind of losing his mind a little bit, but still, they went to the same school. They should have, you can find some common ground.
The king of Singhasari may have in fact done so in preparation for a conflict. Wanting to be the spiritual equal of the Khan and know what mystical powers he could call upon. Singhasari was no vassal and would not be treated as one. When the envoy presented himself at the imperial court, the emperor knew that the mission had failed. He could read it on the man's face, because the king of Singhasari had cut off his ears.
Ooh, which I guess you guys, I mean, supposedly that's kind of up for debate still, how that all happens. But the idea is that it still happens. Let me know in the comments what you think about this specific part. I'm not going to make a judgment on it because I just really don't know. Like I'm not a historian, so yeah, I still like seeing y'all's opinions on what. I guess it really doesn't matter what led to that moment because at the end of the day, it still kind of was going to end up that way anyway. But I'm curious what y'all think why this specifically happened.
Or his nose, or maybe just branded or tattooed him. The record isn't clear, but one thing was for certain. Kublai Khan swore Singhasari would pay for this loss of face. In 1292, the Khan's great fleet arrived off Java. It had 1,000 ships, 20,000 soldiers, and orders to destroy Singhasari. They would remove the king from his throne and find a more pliant ruler.
Which, by the way, I don't know what they thought how that was going to work. Okay. Let's say there wasn't a civil war going on at this time, right? Which we learned in our earlier video on specifically the Mongols, how you guys defeated the Mongols. But let's say there wasn't, right? And let's say they were going to do this. You understand how hard it is to actually get this to work when you have an entire kingdom that's going to constantly fight you every day until you leave? To me, this just doesn't seem like a really good plan. Especially with 20,000 soldiers, you're fighting an entire island. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make it. It just doesn't make any sense. Like if you put all the math on the paper, to me, it just does not seem like a good strategy at all. Even if that's what they were trying to do, but you know, I mean, that goes back to, again, to how the Khan was kind of losing his mind, I feel.
Yet upon arrival, they found the job already half done. The fleet's envoy returned to say that the king was dead. In the 3 years since the imperial envoy's visit, the neighboring kingdom of Kadiri had risen up and captured the capital. There was no longer a Singhasari. Now the king of Kadiri ruled Java. But this fleet had been sent to bring the king of Java to heel, and they couldn't come back empty-handed. If Singhasari was gone, Kadiri would have to do. The fleet easily captured the unprepared Kadiri navy as it assembled at the mouth of a river. Then the great ships began to unload their famous Mongol troops and push into the heart of Java. And that's when they got a message. A very strange message. It claimed to be from the rightful heir to the throne of Singhasari. The sender, Raden Wijaya, was the dead king's stepson, and the blood of his ancestor, the founder of Singhasari and avatar of the god Vishnu, ran strong in his veins. But he was besieged in his new capital by the armies of the Kadiri. If the Chinese would help restore him to his throne, he would happily pay tribute to the great Khan.
And this is so crazy because, like, I should we spoil it? I guess we should. So, spoiler alert: they're gonna trick the Mongols, right? Because we already covered this specific thing on the channel in the video specifically about the how you guys defeated um the Mongols. But what's even crazier, and kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about more in my last video that I didn't really talk about here, or I didn't really talk, I'm going to talk about it here, but I didn't really talk about it in the last video, is so many, or I did talk about it, but I didn't really talk about it enough. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really get the points I wanted to make across because I just felt like, I guess there wasn't another chance to do so. I thought there were going to be another chance to do so, but I really like when we're really looking at this history, right? I really like on the difference of approach to handling in invaders or a threat or just a change in your history, right? Like essentially invaders, right? Because if we look at societies and civilizations so far throughout history, around, especially around this time period, um, too many people, too many societies just felt that it's like, you know what, we're going to fight it out. That's the only thing we know how to do. That's the only thing we're going to try to do. And we're just going to fight it out. Which, don't get me wrong, it's good sometimes. It's good. In a lot of cases, it worked out. But in some cases, it just didn't work. And one of the things that we talked about too in the last video is like the idea of like all these civilizations just throwing soldiers and bodies at the problem, hoping that it'll fix. And it's like, sometimes it'll work, but you're not guaranteed that it will. So I really like how there was just essentially a different approach of like, you know what? They have a large force. We can probably beat them. But I mean, well, obviously they're stuck in a civil war right now, so it's kind of tricky, right? But it's like the idea of like, what if we get them to do the job for us? And then we just put them in a position where they can never win. Because even if they technically won, they would never win because they'll be fighting forever. Because they have to defeat the whole island. And so to me, it's like, that's really smart. It's like, you're basically, rather than playing checkers with your enemy, you're like, let's play chess. I'm going to put you in a position where you're going to have to make a choice. And no matter what, you're going to lose. It's just a matter of, you want to lose a lot? Or you just want to say, you know what, we're out of here. And so I want to put this in this part of the video because I think it's really cool that there was like an example, a historical example of a change in thinking, and like you know, let's be clever about this rather than just trying to take the threat head on.
Become his willing vassal. It was an odd proposition to put their original target's heir on the throne, sure, but eminently practical. They needed to install a vassal ruler, and here one was. So they took the deal, moving on the capital of Kadiri with Raden Wijaya's troops as their rearguard. But one thing about
That's even crazy that they even got them to be the front force. That's how clever they were. That's crazy. And also it goes to show how desperate the Mongols were. A smart invading force would never be in the front. They would be in the back. But that's crazy. Y'all really tricked them. Y'all really tricked them good.
with Raden Wijaya's troops as their rearguard. But one thing about Wijaya. In Indonesian folklore, there are two kinds of rulers. There's the righteous prince, a mystic messianic figure that arises to save Java in its time of need. These figures were devout, steadfast, and morally upright. Then there are the Yago, the fighting cock. Yago are scrappy upstarts. They're rebels and gangsters, people who are resourceful, cunning, and effective, but never to be trusted. Wijaya's ancestor, the founder of Singhasari, had been a Yago. Legend said he'd once been the greatest thief in Java, a man who used theft, flattery, and guile to go from impoverished orphan to usurper of a dynasty.
Which I'm not gonna argue with that. I don't know the history of that. Okay. But at the end of the day, he somehow managed to trick the Mongols. And it changed the course of y'all's history forever. So to me, just to be fair here, at the end of the day, what happened before does not matter. What mattered was that moment.
And Wijaya was a fitting successor to that legacy. When Singhasari fell, he'd been up north with the army, crushing a rebellion. While there, he'd received word that the king of Kadiri had forced the capital. His father-in-law had died surrounded by mandalas and ritual objects, attempting to save his kingdom through mystic ceremonies as the palace burned around him. But Wijaya had something better than rituals to protect him. He had an army, and over the next year, he attacked the Kadiri forces, handing them 3 defeats. But these victories got him no closer to taking the capital. If he wanted to survive, he'd need to establish a base of operations and wait for his moment. So he approached a prince who'd supported the Kadiri rebellion, asking for refuge in exchange for submission. The prince, who figured allying with Wijaya might be a smart bet in the long term, agreed. Wijaya settled on the Brantis River, a place between the island's biggest port and its inland rice terraces.
What? He really just handed over that like they really just that's a bad spot to give up. Hey, good for him. He really managed he's making deals out here.
When he arrived, one of his followers plucked a fruit from a tree. After tasting it, the man threw it away, complaining that it was bitter. Wijaya decided that would be the name of his new capital. Bitter fruit. Majapahit.
Wow.
Now that the Mongols were here, the waiting was over. His chance had arrived. He led the Mongol army's rearguard as they battered their way into the Kadiri capital. They captured the usurper, took his family hostage, and broke his army. The Mongols had done their part. Now, it was Wijaya's turn to hold up the bargain. And, of course, he was happy to pay the tribute as agreed. Oh, but hey, one little thing. His treasury was back in Majapahit.
That's so funny. No way he's going to get him to march back. Oh, is this? Yeah, this is where he gets him to march back and then ambushes him.
Of course.
Yeah.
If they could lend him an escort, he could lead them straight to their reward. Wijaya was, of course, being polite. These escorts were prison guards, not honor guards. He was a captive and had little choice. And so he led them back to his new lands of Majapahit. And straight into an ambush.
Yep.
The army of Singhasari, now Majapahit, annihilated the Mongols, who weren't so formidable without their horses. Afterward, Wijaya...
And they're all lost. Let's like think about it. These people, you have an entire leadership. Like they weren't going to win. They were never going to win. And as somebody who's learning about this conflict, like, yes, it might have seemed like it, but these people just, they came into a situation they had no idea how to solve. So they were just like, you know what? We're just going to do this. See if this works. Okay, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Like, at no point did they were like, because if they were really smart, they would have just been like, you know what? Let's just come back. It's not worth it. But I understand some people are saying like, well, if they came back, they would have died. Spoiler alert, they probably came back and still died anyway. So that's what I'm saying. Like, at the end of the day, like this was a really, they were never good. They were, to me, it just never seemed like they were ever going to win. And so the fact that this all happens is crazy.
He took his troops into the jungles and rice terraces, engaging the Chinese in a hit-and-run guerrilla war, which was not great as far as the Chinese commanders were concerned. Guerrilla wars take time, and they weren't supposed to start an occupation.
Yep.
Their orders had been to destroy a kingdom, and they had done that. Sure, it was the wrong kingdom, but whatever. Check. And they'd taken royal hostages from a family no longer in power, granted, but let's call that a check.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this just doesn't, they were completely lost. And it's just crazy that the ruler that was like, you know what? Let me think outside the box and solve this was the perfect guy to trick all these commanders who were just confused. It's almost like it was fate. It was almost fate. You know?
They'd installed a new ruler, which, okay, it was the heir to the guy they were supposed to remove, but you know what? Check.
That's what I'm saying.
Good job, everyone. Roll out that mission accomplished banner and let's go. And so, the Great Khan's punitive expedition dropped sail and left. Chinese fleets would be absent from the archipelago.
But no, that's not entirely true. They were kicked out because they were like, yeah, we're going to push you out. Or at least this is what the last video said. The new ruler pushed everybody out, right? Because it was like, you're going to either fight us or you're not. And then the Mongols are like, well, we're going to lose because, you know, we already spent men and resources and all this. They were just in a lose-lose situation, so they left. So that's what's crazy. That's the checkmate. That's the playing chess and not checkers mentality, right? Because let's say they did overthrow this guy, right? They would be stuck there fighting until all of them were gone. They would have to just be stuck there fighting until they find a new ruler. And even then, it doesn't matter because you have to, like, you know what I mean? There's always going to be someone new that's going to be trying to fight them. So it was just crazy how it all worked out. It's actually kind of cool.
For the rest of the Yuan dynasty. And meanwhile, Raden Wijaya sat in a new palace, heir to his father-in-law's project to expand and strengthen Javanese power.
Which he ended up doing, spoiler alert. That's so cool. Jadin. That's so funny. I didn't know about the whole school thing or the idea of two different types of leaders. That's actually that's something new. And I think that's really, really cool. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm surprised. Again, I haven't seen this video. A lot of this we already kind of knew through the last video of where we talked specifically about this conflict and how this changed the course of history forever. Not just in Java or Indonesia. Now, what we know now is Indonesia, but in the whole world, right? Especially that region. So, still think it's a cool story. It's a great example of how thinking outside the box can sometimes be the best solution rather than just trying to fight your way out of something. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe because we have more on the way. Love you guys. Check out the next one. Bye-bye. This video is brought to you actually by viewers like you. Thank you so much for subscribing and being part of my journey and allowing me to be a part of yours. Let's create new memories this 2025 on our road to 1 million subscribers. And with all that jazz out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much. I love y'all and enjoy the video.